So welcome to our energy franchise meeting. I am here. Carol Dunn is here. Doug is here. Kirk is here. Emily's here. And Kathy's here. So we've got everybody and Ryan. And we have also a citizen today, Joe. And what's your last name, Joe?
Stevens.
Stephen?
Stevens. S.
It's a good last name.
B. Is it with a B or a P?
A B. Yeah.
Even better.
Oh, and who are you?
I'm the city administrator, Ryan Stevens.
Oh, Ryan.
Ryan
Okay.
Stevens, and we also have John Behill from Black Hills here.
You're done.
Hello.
And so we did have our, I don't have any old business. Did you want to say something to us, Joe?
No, I read the paper and I was kind of curious because of past experience with Black Hills, and I wanted to see what was going on because I do feel we pay too much. There's a lot of other things underlining it, and so I'm here, and I've had 5 strokes, so I have a few issues. So bear with me. And names and stuff I may remember or may forget. John, or it's the way it is. It's thanks.
Sure, great. Good to have you here.
So I do have something under old business.
What?
That is in regard to the email that you sent John to Ryan, and Ryan passed along to council. This was back on August 5th, just talking about the outages. I just had a couple questions on that. Is that okay?
Sure.
I wasn't sure when you mentioned the extreme heat, I wasn't sure if you were saying that that was related to the outages happening or just the fact that it was hard for people to deal with.
No, it complicated switching is really what happened. So what happens is that we had to slow down the switching process because we're switching higher than normal loads. Let's call it that.
So it actually, the heat itself affects how that process works.
The heat didn't affect the process, but the heat drove higher usage. Higher usage caused higher load. Higher load meant that we were moving more load onto different circuits, which made us have to slow down the process so that we didn't overload other circuits.
Got it. And then on the one, the first bullet where you mentioned that there were 4 outages in one particular location caused by a blown fuse.
Yes.
Was it happened 4 times, so it blew the fuse 4 times? Or
So that same fuse has blown multiple times. Yes, is your answer. So they put it the same size in the first time, same size in the second time. The third time they upped the fuse, and then the 4th time they upped the fuse again. As I mentioned to you at the meeting, the system's built with a tolerance or a range of capacity. So they're pushing the upper threshold of the limit of that circuit. But right now the fuse it's still within tolerance and the fuse is holding.
so would that, for us lay people, then does that mean at some point something else has to be done to strengthen?
Very likely. That's one of the conversations that they had is, so what do we do next? Like, what's the longer term fix? So yes.
Right. And I think the question I asked, or kind of along the lines of the question that I asked at the General Government Committee meeting, was just, we're always told to not just put the wrong size fuse in with the fuse-based circuit. Some of us still have houses that have fuses, not circuit breakers.
There's a caveat on that. Don't put a bigger fuse in unless you've got an engineer you can ask.
Whatever, but I assume that is part of the issue. Like it's not a solution that you can go with forever.
So it's fine for now. Again, it's built, the system's built for, it's built for growth. I mean, you're built for additional capacity. So that size has that fuse has been upsized a little bit, but it's still within the tolerance of what the system was built to function with.
It's within the plus or minus is kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, if you could, I don't have the numbers, but if you can go from 50 to 100, that's okay. Don't go to 110.
So how much tolerance is left on that circuit?
That's a good
I honestly don't know that answer.
It's an old system, is what you're saying.
I don't know that I'd say it's an old system. I'd say that maybe they've experienced some growth there, or maybe there's additional load. Who knows? I don't know what's happening, but it's cause for additional use. higher load.
And then on the other bullets where you use the phrase, again, a layperson asking the question, phase to ground fault, and in one bullet said caused by vegetation that damaged the line. I assume that would be like a tree or something that.
Exactly, and so in that instance, the vegetation, it was a tree branch that had fallen. Face to ground simply means that the phase line is touching the ground and a short occurs, you know, a fault occurs. And so that could be, you know, squirrel reaching from line to line, being kind of sarcastic, not sarcastic, but kind of, you know, whether it's one of those two things come together and it causes that arc or
They
whatever it
usually
is.
only do it one time.
Correct,
The
because that's
squirrel.
what happens is, so in the instance of the vegetation, yes, there was a tree in the line, it was in the right of way, so they went back and they had to I believe they had to what's the term, rewire, I guess, because I think it was a severed line. And so they had to redo that line and then they trimmed back the trees out of the right of way as needed.
So that's, the trees in the right of way, that has to be an ongoing issue, and I've asked about that.
Can I
before.
follow up on that, Emily?
Yeah.
In my neighborhood, which, you know, it's out there in East Canyon, they were trimming a tree in my neighbor's yard. Like, oh gosh, it was probably April or May.
Okay.
And I, you know, said, oh, what are you doing? You know, and they said, oh, we're Black Hills Contractor. It's like, oh, okay. And I said, are you gonna get this behind me? Because in the other neighbor's yard, there's this tree that is like on the lines. It's on the wires, everybody's wires, cable, everybody. And they said, oh yeah, we'll be back next week to do that. And it's still there. I have not seen anybody else in the neighborhood, John, since that time. So I'm just wondering, are you keeping up with your tree trimming schedule? Where is that? Are they, because I don't get out much, so I don't wander around the rest of town to see what people are, what they're doing. But in that specific instance, if we have big snow while the leaves are still on the trees, I'm without power.
Sure.
And so the neighborhood will be, you know.
So I'm not familiar with that, but if you want to send me the address, certainly happy to follow up on
I
it.
will.
But no, I mean, there's a maintenance schedule, and in fact, that line where we had the tree on the line, that's actually scheduled. I'm so sorry, I can't remember now, but they did tell me it's on the schedule. I think it's this year.
You know,
That circuit is scheduled to be trimmed this year.
On that subject, you know, I have the back end of my small property in town is a right of way for electric lines. And so since I've owned that property since 1978, I've kind of seen over the years, over the decades, how often those trees get trimmed or topped out by the electric company again over the years. And my impression is that the schedule is just not as frequent as it used to be. I don't know when it changed, whether it changed with Black Hills or more recently, I don't know. But those trees grow a lot into the lines before they come along. So it's just, maybe it's just some vague general feedback for me. It just seems like there's a lot of places where
It's nice to have customers wanting the utility to trim their trees. Because unfortunately,
Most of the
I
time
was
they're
used
very
to getting
unhappy.
calls that were very upset about it.
Yeah.
And you have the right to do your own. So,
Well, and I asked those guys, I said, you have to have permission to go into that yard. And he said, well, we'd like to, you know, especially if there's a dog or something. But he said, no, we can access it from another perspective and then just go in. You know, they like to have permission to go on. And
Right.
and I said, you have permission to come into my place because they can get to those branches from my side of the fence too. So,
Sure.
all right, thanks, John.
Yeah, but if you want to send me a follow-up email,
I will.
I can follow up
I
with
will.
you.
You know, along the lines of trees, this is nothing to, well, it might. But I've noticed, you know, we all like trees when they're smaller and when they grow.
Mm.
Over in South Canyon, and I'm sure the city has a tree group, but some places, they're like canopies over
Yeah.
the road. I mean,
Yeah.
they're getting out of hand. And that's not Black Hills much, I don't think it's a
Yeah.
city. And so
Depends on where the tree is.
that's true.
Well,
That's
exactly,
true. That's true.
yeah.
But,
Well, it's expensive, because I had a tree
Oh, yeah.
taken out and a tree trimmed, my 55-year-old maple. $1,000.
Yeah.
I have a good rental. I didn't find it.
Well, this guy he was really good, you know, and he said, I know him, you know, so he says, I'll give you a break. I was like, oh, break.
You gave me it's a heartbreak.
So my question on the last bullet was just, again, the same phrasing about phase to ground fall resulting in damage. Do we know what caused that?
Oh, remind me of the last bullet, which one?
July 25th, multiple circuits, multiple locations, 4,956 customers. It just says the cause.
So that's the big one that you're referring to, the big outage.
Yes, it was.
I don't know what that, I don't know what the source of that was. It's, so, you know, yeah, my guess is they didn't find, I don't believe they found pieces of animals, so, but I don't know. It's when I was gone and I apologize.
And
crews are live and thriving.
Oh, yeah. And with the new line through Penrose and the new substation, John, what would those improvements have done to alleviate any of these situations?
Yeah, so in this situation, it didn't have any opportunity to help. Because this was primarily, you know, a distribution issue. That is a transmission line, and that's bringing in power. If we were to lose the south line that runs by the river,
So
then
this
yes.
is more infrastructure problems than transmission problems, would you say?
It's a distribution system issue as opposed to a transmission issue.
Oh, okay, well, that makes semantics.
It is, it's very, like, I can remember years ago before I started working here, I looked up what's the difference between distribution, you know, transmission
Yeah, sure.
and whatever else, and it's all the same stuff, it's just bigger or smaller based on the.
Right.
Y versus delta.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
okay,
So,
all right.
yeah, so in this instance, but, you know, just kind of generally speaking, transmission lines carry load to a transmission substation, so that's
Sure.
steps it down to distribution level, and from distribution level,
Right.
it goes out to customers.
Okay,
So,
thanks for helping us lay people understand a little better.
thanks. That was my theory.
Okay. Excuse me. So under new business, we did have the council meeting. I did go back and review the relevant parts of it this morning. There were lots of different opinions on about the committee, and a unanimous opinion was to say thank you to everybody for your time and for your efforts here. It's really been greatly appreciated. And we talked about the whole range from continuing on kind of as we've been doing, to maybe taking a pause. And after going back this morning and listening to all of the discussion, what I think that our direction from council is not to continue as we've been doing, which is just bring up topics and, you know, explore and have people come talk to us, but be a little bit more focused. The issue is Ryan's time. Okay, and one from my perspective, after listening to what council was telling us, from my perspective, a good way to judge that is to say, okay, is what we're doing, is it worth Ryan's time, considering everything he's got on his plate for the city, to be here in this meeting? And if it's not, then maybe that's a subject that we can postpone or wait until it's more applicable or something like that. And so that's kind of my take on the whole thing. I don't know, Kathy and Emily, would you like to?
I made notes, and other council members aren't here to defend themselves if I don't say this correctly, but my notes suggested that, you know, people like Andrea Stein, Amy, Commissioner Tim Dennehy, myself, for supporting some kind of regular schedule, not as frequently as we've been meeting, but something more regular. I think my notes suggest that it was the mayor and yourself, John, that were suggesting taking a pause. I mean, the 1 time a month schedule, I didn't hear that turned down or obliterated in some way, which I see as being separate from the question you just asked about Ryan's. So I don't know, certainly Kathy or what Carol was there too, heard it differently than.
I think you explained it pretty well. My take is that I would, as far as the meeting times and things that way, as individuals keeping track of, and I'm going beyond what was actually said, but my take on it is that keep an eye on what the PUC is doing and keep an eye on what the hell legislators is going to do as far as like we were talking about the all of a sudden brain fart, but thank you, the community choice. I had the C right, but I couldn't get it out. Community choice and so forth. And then, you know, as things come up, then I think it behooves us to probably get together and discuss what's being said that way. I have I think most of us have the ability. I don't even mind having a Zoom meeting if we need to or something that way. I don't know if that helps you. Probably not a damn thing for you, but it's all time. But hopefully, I think most of this time has been an investment, and I hope you feel that most of the time it's been fairly worthwhile. So I think it behooves us to continue on with the issues that are affecting us from the state perspective, and then come back and discuss it and see where it fits us locally.
And I would just add to that, at the point that it's appropriate, I would hope that this committee would be used by the city in looking at whatever draft would come up for an RFP on the system analysis.
And I would add, Emily, to what you said there, although the council members, I think in general are supportive of the committee and want us to maintain the resources we've got and be able to function as a committee. But there was also concern about Ryan's time from both Amy and Tim. And so I think that we're in a balancing situation here where we need to do some balancing. And that means not just, you know, as we've been doing, but look at more judicious use of Ryan's time here to make sure we're making it count. And so I think that Emily had requested that we talk about community choice energy. I don't think that the time is right for that discussion yet.
I just would like to let this committee know why it's come up there. So that's all. That there is an effort already begun to have legislation in the 2024 legislative session beginning in January, and that the volunteers who are working on this, mostly in the Northern Front Range area, are already out looking for support, whether it's communities or individuals or groups or whatever it is. So that's really the update.
So did I understand that at this point of community choice, there's not enough interest in it?
No,
I wouldn't say it that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not that the issue with community choice. Excuse me. I mean, one way to think about it is, and John, I'll put you on the spot here a little bit.
Sure.
If Canyon City signed a contract with a different energy provider, what would a wholesale provider? What would Black Hills' response to that contract? Really, it cannot be a two-party contract. If there's to be a contract, it has to be a three-party contract, does it not?
So, to clarify your question for me.
Sure.
Are you saying if community choice energy were passed by the legislature?
No. I'm saying today.
Right now.
Yes, right now. Today, right now, because we don't know what the legislature is going to do with anything.
Right.
And we
I
heard
just
that
didn't
last
understand.
time. Actually, we heard that last time, but so the question is, And I don't know that you've ever thought about it, and if you don't have a response, that's fine, maybe you can think about it, but if Canyon City wanted to sign a contract with a wholesale energy company, how could that happen, or what would prevent that?
It would not happen.
Yeah, it's not allowed under the current
No, it's
construct.
not.
It's not
The
allowed.
regulatory
under-
construct,
No.
correct.
So that's the point about community choice energy. Until the legislature does something, there's really not a choice. Okay, it's not a choice.
Well, I guess that's what I was getting at. Until the legislature does something, it's a non-question.
But Emily's point is that there are people, lobbyists,
Yeah.
let's call them.
So we just
activists
want to
perhaps.
monitor it.
Oh, sure, I
See
can
what happens.
understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not arguing.
Oh, and it,
No, I'm just.
and it's, number one, we don't know if it would ever pass the legislature. Number two, even if it did, it would take some period of time for the rulemaking process to occur through the Public Utilities Commission. But ultimately, even if it got all the way through that, it doesn't mandate any changes for any community. It just provides a different part of it. Exactly.
And it provides employment for the lobbyists of both Black Hills and Excel for the next quite a while. I'm sorry. I'm just being facetious, but it's true, you know, so.
But now's the time for input.
Yes,
Right, yes.
exactly.
Wouldn't have any input into the whole process.
Yeah, and it allows us, if we have
So it's-
input to
So
counteract
it's
it.
good to know what's going on, 'cause that way.
Absolutely.
Well, and to me, I keep seeing this dichotomy in Colorado between the north and the south. And we need, in our communities down here in the south, including Black Hills Service Territory people, to stay on top of this and not let the north rule us, as they do so many times in the
Because
legislature.
they might come up with something that makes sense in the Excel territory.
Right,
or
exactly.
Wouldn't here, I mean, we don't know.
Yeah.
So we can't just sit back and let someone else.
Oh, no, absolutely not, no. Because then you come to the
Perhaps,
point where it's
perhaps.
like, what happened? And it's too late to do anything about what happened.
But short of employing a lobbyist, we really don't have
Well,
many
No.
choices, you know?
no.
But it goes back to what Kathy said, which is the direction from council was to monitor.
Mhm.
Watch these things, and see what's going on. If we see something that requires us to meet as a committee, we should let that be our trigger. Okay, and we have such a trigger this morning. I've got an addition to the agenda. Black Hills is gonna do a presentation on their clean energy plan. Not quite yet, but so that's what I would ask, each of you as committee members. If you see a development that you think that we should get together and talk about as a committee, you know, send me some information and we'll see what we can do as far as getting the meeting. But as far as scheduling regular meetings, you know, council did say it's kind of up to you guys. But as a chair, I'm gonna be the valve on that a little bit and say, let's have them for the immediate future, let's have them triggered by events rather than just by a calendar. So that's my suggestion. And that's how I think that I'll be approaching this. So, you know, feel free.
If we do have that where they're not scheduled, I would ask that we get a notice quicker than the day before.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah.
Because
Oh, yeah.
the day before
Yeah, yeah.
just doesn't cut it.
Yeah.
Gotcha. That's fair enough.
Because
Fair enough.
you got other things that you're doing, and if you don't have it on your schedule,
So-
it needs to be sent out in a time.
So one thing we should do today is then schedule our next meeting. We can schedule it right here, right now, and if there's intervening events, that's certainly fair game to change that with more than a day's notice.
Yeah.
And maybe
With appropriate notice.
maybe then kind of keep the second and fourth Monday mornings in mind. That might make sense to try to aim for one of those, since that's something that we.
Yeah, that's a good
That's
point.
fair.
And I have a question just in terms of back on the question of Ryan's time with committee meetings. is there a way in order to keep these meetings whenever they occur, keep them public and keep them available online when we can? Is there a way for perhaps a committee member to run the Zoom part of it, or is there another way of doing this? If it's not worth your time being here, or you're not going to have to be here to talk.
So I have a comment there, and my comment is, if it's not worth Ryan's time to be here, we should really consider having him or not. It doesn't seem to me that there's.
Well, then that sounds like a circular thing to me. So
Oh,
let's
no,
talk
no,
about that.
it's not circular. If we, that's our discussion and our, you know, input on that. But if, as a bottom line, if it's not worth Ryan's time to be here, then I would hesitate to call such a meeting. You know, use that as
So
our.
Ryan's ready to respond to my question.
Yeah, so Emily, I think if the committee's having a meeting, I want to be present. You know, Kathy mentioned it earlier, you know, this group has created kind of a brain trust, and missing out on those meetings, you know, I don't know what I'm going to be missing. And that
And I think it towards the RFP purpose and things that way, something could definitely come up. So, and I don't see us calling the meeting unless it really, unless we have a good one. So I think if it makes sense.
We've almost never done, it seems like, to me, call a meeting where we didn't have agenda items.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think we also need to keep in mind that there was an election. And that it was 66% of the people voted against it. So it's an issue for the community. And if it's a big issue for the community, it should be an issue for the city council and staff. So if you're looking at serving your people are saying, we want something done, or at least look at it.
Sure, and that was part of the discussion. I encourage you to go back and if you get some time, watch the city council meeting. Because that was a point that was brought out during the meeting, that, you know, and what that was in relation to was the potential budget item, or a proposed budget item, to do a wires and poles study, essentially. And so that is the direction to Ryan, and correct me if I mistake this, Ryan, but as my understanding of the direction to Ryan was that we want to have a budget item in the budget, but it's not yes or no yet.
Yeah.
That the council wants to review the dollars, review what the study is going to accomplish. And you know, one council member was trying to make sure that if it's important enough for us to have a study, that to understand what the staff draw or staff burden of such a study the study would create. And so there's that too. But so what I think that means in terms of our next meeting, how is the budget process going to go from here, Ryan? Agenda wise, not time wise.
Time wise, yeah. Well, the budget has to be in city council's hands by October 1st. So between now and the end of September, Tammy Nordyke and I will be working on finalizing all the budget numbers, and you know, we will probably have you know, some offsetting options, depending on you know, some of these types of things. So I think you know, staff is already, you know, all the department directors have turned in their budget numbers. So Tammy and I have to work through all the numbers and figure out what's realistic, what's not. And, you know, we have to cut all the departments first before we get into special projects.
Exactly.
So, I think the question that I have, probably more so for the Energy Committee, is as we're looking at the study, and as I mentioned at the general government meeting, the cost of this study is going to depend on how in-depth you want to go into the study. You want a 10% look at the system? Do you want a 50% look at the system? That's going to really depend on, you know, that the cost of that study is going to depend on that type of analysis.
Sure.
May I ask a question? This study is to, for power lines and poles and right of ways to find out what there is. And Black Hills won't work with you? No, I'm still gonna ask.
You can
Black
ask.
Hills won't work with
Go
you?
ahead, John, answer
It
that.
behooves me that they
I'm
won't.
sorry, I don't. mean-
In case, if they're trying to sell it, then try to sell it since they own it.
Well, they don't want to
They
sell.
do
No,
not.
no, oh, because of the profits?
Well, sure.
No, really, okay, well, what I would like if someone could talk to me after the meeting, because I know new people have a lot of questions and can interrupt and delay. So if someone could talk to me for maybe a half hour after the meeting.
I think the short answer is it's proprietary knowledge to Black Hills, and it's not information they would care to share or make public.
It'd be like Safeway getting.
Oh, I
key
understand,
sweepers.
but I had to ask.
That's okay.
But it's information that we need as a community
Mhm.
to know how to proceed into the future, with or without Black Hills.
Right, oh, I agree.
So do we know the scale? So we've got our hands on a button here, and we can slide the button up, you know, the more information, the more the cost, right? The more information costs. So the more information we get, so if we get perfect knowledge of the system, or a complete description of poles and wires, that's probably, you know, 7 figures or something like that.
At least.
Ryan, won't the people who you're reaching out to do such studying be able to give you a scale like that? You know, based on their experience, because you said there's very few companies and they do pretty much all that sort of work for all systems.
Yeah, we've had some high level discussions, but I was hoping to get a little bit closer.
Closer to,
Yeah, a better feel from the committee on, and what, you know, putting some bounds
You know,
on.
from these consultants' perspective, they want to do 100%
course.
because of the
Well,
money.
yeah.
involved. My perspective is based on age. We know, like, my district up south is pretty damn new. It's underground. That makes it a little bit easier to sit back.
Yeah.
To maybe perhaps to eliminate some of that. I think the downtown area and some of the older areas around here that have the growth potential are the areas you want to concentrate on because it's some of the oldest system out there.
In the main street, the commercial area.
Well,
Right.
any growth will put more pressure on that system, so you've got to know what's what with the system.
Yeah,
So maybe a blended approach as far as the analysis, you know.
yeah,
you know.
yeah, you know, you still need to get a percentage in there to, but yeah, I would say that if you're gonna prioritize, you do it the way I
Okay.
suggested and go from there. That's just me. Gee, John, what do you think? Do you think that would make sense or?
No comment.
Yeah, I
I'm
know.
thinking back, and this must have been sometime last year, I can't quite place it in time. But it's in the economic development framework. I know that Rick Harmon had talked about with council, I believe, different areas, places being looked at. Are there any of those
Yeah, the
areas that
Site selection consultant came in and did a study.
Yeah.
Right.
that there might be some of those potential sites that we want to know more about?
see, I would look at that a different. Okay, the way that I would look at that is if you have, if like a Love's, if you've got you've got a brown field and somebody's gonna be bringing something in. Power is kind of part of what everybody looks at to do that. And so to study it under our desire to know poles and wires, at least my desire to know poles and wires, that probably is not gonna buy us much, right?
From the Rick Harmon side of things, he wants to be able to tell people, hey, we know.
Well, but that's a different study. That's a different study
I think
than what we're doing.
from Rick's standpoint, it's more about overall capacity of the system. So if we've got issues now where circuits are popping hot and it takes forever to, no offense, John.
Poor John, his skin has gotten so thick.
Redistribute offload the power into different circuits. And we have, for instance, we're trying to attract something like a data center here, the cost for them being down is That's business they're using.
Right, okay, so we're
John?
talking about similar things, but not.
John, is it the city's right to ask for all outages within a period of time and the length of the outage?
I honestly don't know that answer.
I believe that's on the web.
I don't know that answer.
Well, would you check that out for us? Because that would be.
I found a site at some point during our meetings where the outages, length of time, I think that's a FERC issue, yeah.
For FERC, yeah.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I think there's a website out there.
I think you're
Published.
correct.
Has that.
I think you're correct. Okay.
I think that'd be good information to have.
I think we had it at one time.
Well,
Yeah.
I guess what I'm saying is that helps Ryan prioritize areas to double check and
Right.
stuff.
Well, you can compare it to what co-ops and municipalities have, then, too, their response time.
So Ryan, do you, on the RFP process for a study, do you have a list of people that you are considering using, or is it a group that you're considering using? How is that? How do you, when we do the study, of course, we're going to put it out to everybody.
Yeah, we'll put it out to everybody, but it's a short list of folks that we've spoken to.
How short is the list?
I tell you.
No, I'm not being facetious. The reason
We're talking a handful, less than a handful.
Yeah.
So what I'm thinking, to me, this is a prime area the committee might be able to shed light and provide benefit to the city and council. Is what I'm thinking of is there some way that we could sit down with some of the vendors and say and have them present to us what options are, because really that's where we're having problems, is understanding how big to make it, what areas to include and things like that. And maybe if we talk directly with them, you don't think so?
I think Ryan has a pretty good handle on this, and I think it would be better to keep it in-house that way than to open it up to a public meeting.
Yeah.
Because which one of us is not gonna be there?
So,
Well, it's
oh,
just, I don't know.
well,
it's
but
just-
we can, you're concerned about opening it up to the public.
Yeah,
I guess I would switch it. If you want committee involvement, I would assign somebody from the committee to join me in some of those meetings rather than making them a public meeting.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, that's a good suggestion. I can go with that.
so,
And could be two somebody's.
Could be two somebody's, yes.
Good point.
So in your decision, Ryan, as to, or whoever makes the decision, whether it be you or a group of people, as to who to choose, I think it's very important that we choose somebody that definitely will not have a bias. And we get recommendations from other people that have used these groups, which I'm sure you have.
Yeah, we have, yes.
And we've got some pretty good energy attorneys.
yeah. And this is a fact finding. It's not, this to me, I see this as an objective.
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
It's not a subjective to
Yeah.
where any of our bias should enter into
Right.
it at all, if
No,
we even had bias.
Yeah.
Well,
I
and if the-
agree.
if the company
But the
shows
company-
bias-
The company.
Well, if in that small of a pool, if any one company shows bias, everybody else is gonna know and they're gonna be blackballed
Yeah.
in the industry. you know?
Yeah, what we want is a,
To a certain
you know,
extent.
and that, that's part of the RFP. What we want is a true representation and not, I mean.
And that's why
what we're
we
looking
as a city want to own this and not have it as another utility or whoever do the analysis. Is that's why we want to have that done by our city, as the city.
So John, are you asking, and Ryan, are you asking that we as a committee come up with a percentage today? of
No.
what we
Not
know?
not necessarily today.
Okay.
If there's a feeling, something to think about is, what percentage of the system, do we feel it's gonna give us a good confidence level of what the overall system representation is.
And the area of that concentration, of that, you know, because like you point out, you know, there's, I don't know that there's a bunch that we can do with like Dawson. You know,
Or Wolf Park, either one of that
Yeah.
areas, yeah, you know.
right? So,
Can I ask one more question?
sure,
Ryan, when you send out an RFP, can you put in there 10% or 30% and get bids for each one of them?
We can ask for bid alternates.
That's a good point, yeah.
You know, that way you get a little
Sure.
idea as far as
absolutely.
cost differential.
Right.
That might help a little bit, you know.
So are you gonna be consulting with anybody to develop the RFP?
Yes. You know, I've got some examples of similar RFPs already, so we'll be using that as a basis.
Okay, so you have RFPs that you're gonna use as a basis or blueprint, you know, help us understand what the boundaries can be.
Yeah.
But I'm just trying to figure out where the appropriate committee participation would be.
I think if there was committee members that were interested in looking at that, and providing suggestions, I'd be open to that.
You know what, I'll tell you what, here's my opinion, and let's see what the committee thinks about this. But because of my interest, I would like to be on the committee, but I think that we should appoint 2 committee members. And I think it should be Kathy and Kirk to sit down with Ryan and hear where we are with that. And at some point, we would maybe when the let's see. What would be an appropriate time to hold a committee meeting after that in this process? That's what
You might have to just call one once everything's ready, you know, give a little bit of.
I think it would be important for the committee to, you know, once we put the RFP out, the playing field is kind of set. And I say kind of, because if there were, you know, if the committee, for instance, reviewed the RFP and said, oh, wait a minute, here's something that we forgot, we could always amend the RFP. And so I think that there is a review process.
Yeah, I think, you know, if we have a small working group on the RFP, I think we can bring the RFP to the committee before we publish.
Okay.
I don't see any problems with that. I don't like amending RFPs after they've been published.
It does cause a lot of
That
problems.
comes into the negotiation afterwards if you need to, I would assume, if when you're picking the entity that's might or might not be doing it, so.
Okay, so I think what we're saying is that the committee would like to review the RFP. Okay, I think that would be really good, but it's a close to final product.
Because when the RFP goes out, I'm assuming that becomes public anyway.
It does.
So we're not letting out the secrets of the world, so I think it makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, the RFP will be a public document. There's no secret sauce in there.
So what do you guys think about my suggestion? That we designate.
That's fine with me.
But you have to be comfortable with that. I mean, that's a real one question. Would you be comfortable with it?
He's such a good writer too, as far as being able to see the.
I'm not right now.
Oh, no, I understand that, but I mean, being able to, but you've done it within your own old work schedule to where you know the outline, yeah. But
I've been a city employee.
So, you know, and based on both of your backgrounds, you know, Kathy, your extensive experience and Kirk, all the work that you've done in writing and collating all of our facts, it seems to me that you would be kind of if we're going to choose 2, that you guys would be the logical person.
Are you willing?
Oh, I'm more than willing, you bet. Just, yeah,
Okay,
just because this will be the next stage, that gives us a yay or nay as to where we go from there. This gives us a really good, I think, deciding point as to, lay it on the line and say, okay, and also convincing the rest of council as to the direction we want to go and feel we should go.
sure.
And when you look at costs, there's a short-term cost and there's a long-term cost. So if you're just gonna concentrate, we're gonna have to spend a little bit of money up front, and you don't look at what it could cost the community in the long term, your view of government is very skewed.
Yeah, we kept trying to emphasize the other night that that everything up to this point and beyond is an investment. It's not just lost dollars, and your time too, and I realize it's a lot. But I think it's an investment in community, and so I think that's.
But we've got time in too. So
Yeah,
volunteers, so, we
Some of
spent.
us have worked on this for a while.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, yes. Yes, she is. And I mean, she is our eyes and ears to the PUC and some of the other stuff a lot. So I think we've all been, and Doug, I appreciate the devil's advocate and everything else that you bring, because that makes us honest in what we're doing, in the sense of making sure that we're doing it for the right reasons.
I don't think it's proper to have a committee that all things down.
Oh, I totally agree. I
Because
think
there
that
are
is.
people out there in the community that feel like you do, and we need to be able to explain to them what we're doing and honor how they're thinking.
Well, you know what my short-term concern with budget is? Community pool. Because they're getting ready to put out an RFP for that.
Yeah.
And no offense, it's not our district, but it's our community too, and I'm sure we're being asked to put in some money.
If we're, there's the pot's only so big.
Yes, exactly. So I mean, we have to be prepared to make a decision on that too. And that's not,
You have to prioritize what
That'll be what council does.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That RFP closes this Friday, the full RFP.
Yeah.
And that's a very important deal too. So it's one of those to where we have to be realistic when we're going forward.
Okay,
I do have another question related to 4A whenever we're ready to sit here slightly.
What I would do now is say, I think that our next meeting can be triggered by, where we get with the RFP. Are we likely to have an RFP within 3 weeks or 4 weeks? Or not, or a draft or something, I don't know. My suggestion is that we let events trigger our next meeting rather than schedule one. Is what I think. And so along those lines, as you guys, work with Ryan, keep me in the loop a little bit about what's going on, and that'll naturally happen with how Brian and I meet with the mayor every week to talk about stuff, and so I can get updates there. And so that the idea that we have enough, like to your point, that there's enough notice about when the meeting is going to be, so that we can try to make sure that it's.
Yeah, and maybe Kurt and Kathy, we can use some of these Mondays to work on some of the RFP to get things going.
Sure.
Cool. Yeah, okay.
When the general government committee met last week and got the latest report and our list of recommendations from this committee, frankly, I was a little concerned that there wasn't really much discussion on the full list of recommendations. And I don't know what to do about that. Maybe someone else has some ideas.
Yeah.
It kind of leaves those hanging, is it going to be one of those things where our recommendations that we worked many hours on putting together and wording, are they going to just sit somewhere on the shelf, so to speak? Or
You know what? I see it as an opportunity that was wide open, and if we need to reprioritize or we want to prioritize that list, then I think that's something we as a committee do until we're told not to. How's that for a? Just because, you know, it's kind of like they didn't tell us not to do anything.
Well, they just didn't tell us much.
I think time was getting a little short in that respect from sitting there, but I don't know, I agree, I see what you're saying for sure, but from my perspective, we didn't get a don't do anything comment or anything, so I feel like until we're told otherwise, that we continue on monitoring, we continue on, we see something, we make a recommendation to the, you know, hey, council, this is what's going on. But does that make sense?
At the very least, we as a committee should kind of keep our eye on that list.
Yeah, I agree. You know, have it tacked to my wall and take it.
Well, and one of the things that I think that we recommended, and I've tried to point this out to council when we were having a meeting, is we really do need legal advice on what the charter says. You know, and maybe the answer is, well, it says whatever you want it to say. But about PUC involvement and spending dollars, franchise dollars to do that, and how that shakes out for us as a council. So please make sure that's in the budget somewhere or something.
Well, yeah, that will be in the budget as well.
Okay.
Well, and cannot ordinary citizens make comment to the PUC on rate
Absolutely.
cases?
Absolutely.
Okay, so instead of maybe it coming from Ryan, it comes from, you know, the group as regular citizens. You're regular, I'm regular.
I'm
You
here.
know, well, the city council has got a special kind of a arm's length situation too. So, but we could, as representing ourselves, you know, we could put in.
That's always fun.
And that's cheap and free.
And you get what you pay for.
Oh, well.
Let other members of the community know that process is open
Yes,
to them
that
too.
too. Yeah, that's
Because
a
if
good
they
idea.
start getting
Yeah,
flooded with a
absolutely.
bunch of comments, that'll
Yeah.
get their attention.
Yeah.
Squeaky wheel does.
Well, that's
get
what
greased.
Excel customers did up north.
Yes.
So,
And that's, I know from sitting in on some PUC hearings in the last whatever year or so, that I really genuinely believe that members, that commissioners on the PUC want to hear more from the public on any issue that they're having. Yeah, because they always have the utility attorneys there and not much else.
If you don't give your feedback, you're gonna get stuck with what they push.
got it.
That's it.
That's right.
So it's a good point on our recommendations. And so really kind of although it was ambiguous a little bit, what the temper of the council was. And if you haven't seen the meeting, you probably should look at it so you can decide for yourselves. But maybe what we need to do is, if we want to carry out these recommendations, we probably need to prioritize them ourselves and look at creating an action plan of what we want to do as a committee as far as carrying out these recommendations. So I think things are going to happen here soon enough that we can have that on our plate, that we can wait to hear from what's going on with the RFP, use that to trigger our next meeting, at which point we'll also discuss our priorities of our recommendations. How's that sound?
How long has this committee been meeting?
About 2 years.
2 years.
Just didn't say too long, but.
Okay. Let's see, it's 10:54. what I'd like to do is take about a 5-minute break, John, and then we'll move into John's presentation
Can
on.
I ask just a couple of questions?
Sure.
Charging station,
Uh-huh.
who owns?
The contract.
Typically a developer or company.
Yeah.
What about
So
those?
they're owned by a private company?
Correct.
Does the city pay rent?
Do they pay rent to the city?
No. Does the city pay rent to this company?
Hell no.
No,
So the city has no investment
no.
in the charging system? Okay, cool.
No.
Okay, cool.
You're gonna turn down?
No, but, sorry, no.
Well, maybe they probably pay rent to a property.
The ones that are over here, I don't think they're paying rent to us. I'd have to go back and look at the agreement. I don't remember the exact agreement.
Oh, on the.
At the Peabody parking lot.
Oh, yeah, but that's city property.
It is city property,
Okay.
yes.
Not yet.
But we're not.
They're not paying yet.
No, there was, yeah, I'd have to go back and look at the agreement. I don't.
But the point is, we're not paying.
Specifics.
Okay, good.
Right.
Number two,
Mhm.
was there any, decisions made on the three lights down towards McKinsey
3 lines.
for the safety, the overhead lights?
Oh,
Warren.
it was request for more information. Essentially, and I think that,
It was tabled, yeah.
yeah, it was tabled.
It's for the.
Yeah, because there's more than just there's three.
There's like
Yeah.
almost a couple dozen.
Oh, is there?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's 3 different phases to that project.
Okay.
Yeah, so stay tuned.
And I was thrilled, because that's been one of my requests for many, many years. I drive Fremont Drive, and you're like,
Mhm.
okay, please don't jump out in front of me. It's like,
Mhm.
no, and people have. Really,
Oh, sure. Especially when they get more mature like myself.
Both by.
no, when they get more, like yourself.
Not guilty.
That stretch to my liquor store is.
We're gonna say where they stop by Jewett is what you're saying.
No, well, it was, yeah, the bottle shop.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, let's
Okay.
take a quick 5-minute break.
Okay, all right.
Okay, everybody, we're back from our little break. And John.
Hi.
The floor is yours.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate the flexibility, John, putting me on the agenda. Not knowing how you all were progressing, moving forward, I had said to John, I could either make some brief comments today, or I did have this presentation that I had put together for stakeholder engagement. So thank you for allowing me to speak today. I just wanted, this is an opportunity to update you a little bit on the clean energy plan that we filed, and that's a perfect place to start. So just a little background reminder, and please bear with me. I'm gonna put my notes in front of me because I literally just finished this presentation a couple days ago. So just a quick reminder. So Senate Bill or House Bill 1261. I'm thinking.
Sounds good.
I'm looking at Emily because she's the most engaged at that level, but I think it's 19/12/61. And that was when, the legislature said, we're encouraging all utilities, all investor-owned utilities to file a clean energy plan. And you can either file a clean energy plan, or we will have the Air Quality Control Commission oversee your obtaining 80% carbon emission reductions from the 2005 level. And so back in 2021, we announced that we would file a voluntary plan. In 2022, we filed that with the Public Utilities Commission. And the goal of that plan, just a reminder, and I know you've heard this before, but it was to achieve 80% emissions reduction by 2030. And our goal is to balance, safety, reliability, and affordability, because we know those are the 3 things our customers care about most. So that plan was filed, and it was really just a roadmap. It's a roadmap that says, here's how we're going to obtain those goals. So as you are aware, the process is pretty elongated process. There is, we file it, the PUC opens a hearing, interveners choose to have their voice heard, and they file for standing. This is a very long litigated process. And I've included this slide because, we started in early 2023 with this process, and you just see the number of parties that were subject to the settlement. And I put that up there because it's important to note two things. Number one, there's a lot of different, a lot of masters to satisfy, a lot of people, a lot of stakeholders. And number two, Canyon City was part of this process. And I appreciate that you all were there and that you were part of it. And that's kind of the value of you being as part of those PUC proceedings, is having your voice heard. So that settlement was unanimously reached with all of the different parties. Go ahead. Look at the next one. So as you may recall, we had proposed initially, here's some of what was proposed on the left, and on the right is what was settled. I'm going to focus on a couple of different things. First, when we modeled this, we said, hey, we can add 450 megawatts of renewable energy onto our system. That'll get us to a 90% carbon emission reduction. That means 79% of the electricity that our customers use will be coming from renewable resources by 2030. And by the way, we would like to increase our planning reserve margin. That's that extra margin that you have available for extra hot days, for just being able to make sure you have enough energy on the system, enough capacity if for some reason you need it. And so those were kind of 4 key attributes that I want to talk about, because these were part of the settlement process. So from 450, the unanimous settlement agreement settled on 400 megawatts of renewable energy. I wasn't in the room, but what I hear is that had largely to do with, there's another 50 megawatts as additional cost, as you might guess. There's additional resources to be built and paid for. And so interveners said, we would really prefer you do just what the legislation asked. Our rationale was there was some benefits on scale. There was, we know where the state's going. They told us 100% reduction by 2050. So we know what the roadmap looks like. We're going to have to add it. That was part of the reason it was modeled. But, we were able to come to an agreement that 400 would be satisfactory for us. That gets us to the 80% carbon emission reduction. There's 70% renewables, renewable energy production for our customers by 2030. And then the planning reserve margin. So when we started this process, we had a 15% margin reserve, and we were requesting to bump it up to 24%. As you might guess, planning reserve margin, that has a cost associated with it. And so I think the 20%, as I would say, I think it's recognition from both sides that extreme weather patterns are increasing, that it's important to have that a substantial reserve margin, adequate reserve margin. They just didn't see that 24%, the number that we had proposed, was necessary. And so that was settled at 20%. And I just want to share that I pulled this out of a recent report in June, but the North American Electric Reliability Corporation cited in their most recent assessment that 2/3 of North America is at risk of energy shortfalls in the summer. 2/3 of North America. So that's why that planning reserve, that margin, is so important.
Is that US or Canada also?
United States. Yep. So we can go ahead and go to the next one. So what does that really mean? It means that we are now in phase 2. Phase 2 is when we start to go out, like you're trying to work through this process of an RFP. We have published an RFP. It went out July 31st. And we have 100, our bidders have until October 20th to propose how they're going to build 400 megawatts of renewables and add them to our system. This is a lengthy process. Like I said, the bid process is open until October 20th. We expect to see a very robust process. When I talk to our regulatory team, they're expecting hundreds of bids, like 400 plus is what they're thinking.
Is that one project or is that?
So, yeah, we'll get to that, but we have, our preference is multiple projects.
Yeah.
Because we would like some geographic diversity, we might like some diversity in the types of resources. And then there's some interconnection and different things, you know, there's gonna be limits, some places will allow, you know, the size of the system to be built, so. There's all those things that are a factor, but we have asked for multiple bids. Once those bids are received, we have 120 days to sift through those, to evaluate those, to rank those, and to come back with some sort of report to the PUC that says, here's kind of what we're thinking. Here's what we think looks best. Now, we don't do that by ourselves. We will hire a third-party evaluator. That evaluator, and I'll share some information on the next slide, but that evaluator works not only for us, but they work for the PUC. And Axion, I think, is the name of the company, if I say it correctly. They've been in business for 40 years. They've done hundreds of these proposals, and that's their job. So, you know, we count on the fact that their reputation is on the line as well. And they're going to give us some fair, some practical, and some candid advice about what they see in that bidding process.
Were they involved in the one that you had to stop because the contractor couldn't fulfill it?
You know, that's a good question,
I'm
Kathy.
just
I
asking.
actually don't know that question.
Because that's always a risk you're gonna have, no matter what type.
Sure. And I think, you know, that's one of the.
Don't worry about it.
The reality is we could have built that anyway. It just wasn't going to save our customers money, which was the whole point. Don't have that thing. But I will ask that question because I think that's a great question. So once the bids are evaluated, we will, and I have been told there's a high degree of likelihood that after the 120 days, there will be an extension. Because there are so many bids to go through. So, but this timeline is assuming that we hit the 120-day mark and that, you know, everything goes swimmingly, right? Everything's perfect. That we would get some sort of decision from the PUC by April 2024 to say, yes, these are the resources that that you can build. Go ahead and build them on your system.
I do have
And then
a question
construction.
about that, John, is that right? I look at what the PUC has done just as an example with the shut off thing where they kind of extended hearings, extended before an ALJ, administrative law judge. And so I just wondered if that's realistic to say 3 months you'd have a PUC decision.
It's probably not, but that's this is the process, and this is what, you know, the timelines that are laid out. But Emily, to your point, there is one hard date here. These projects must be in service by 2029 because we have to hit the 80% reduction by 2030. So these projects must be in service by 2029.
What happens if you don't?
Oh, you'd have to ask the legislature.
Fines.
That's a great question.
There's no triggers in the legislation.
John, that is a great question. I actually just want to make sure I get these two questions. Does anybody have a pen handy?
Yeah.
Wow, thanks. So. Axion with Turkey Creek. That's question one. And second is penalties for non-compliance.
For non-achievement.
For non-attainment.
Yeah.
Was a word.
Great questions. I don't know those two answers, but I will get them for you. So yeah, questions about that at this point?
Are they gonna like tell you what to do, recommend the types of energy producing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm going to get to the scoring matrix here in just a second, but those bids will all be evaluated, and then based on how they score, there will be a preferred, an alternate, and a second alternate that will be recommended. Okay. Most likely, and that's what we did with the Turkey Creek project. That's likely what it's going to look like. So then, you know, here's this process that I mentioned, the Axion group. You're welcome to send this out. This is a public document, so you're welcome to send that out. That's the link to Axion if you want to learn a little bit more about the third-party evaluator. So when it comes to evaluation of these projects, 75% of the scoring is going to be economic. So, delivering cost-effective solutions to our customers, that's the highest priority. The other 25%, these are more, what would you call, these are non-economic metrics that need to be evaluated. There is a best value metric that is, if you want to say a nod to organized labor and making sure that fair wages are paid, that sort of thing. That's in every state contract now. So there's a best value metric of local community support. So if a community is standing up and saying this is the one that we really want to see, that's weighed in it as well. Transmission access, of course, they have to connect to the system. Developer construction operating experience. So can they deliver on what they have proposed? And then there's also real property and environmental considerations. So there might be things like a red, black-footed ferret, and somebody doesn't want us building in their habitat or who knows what. So the important part about this last 25%, each one of those is weighted at 5%.
Wow.
Okay. So this is the whole reason I'm sitting here talking to you. And this is why I thought it was really important to come and speak with you.
I don't know. I guess I'm questioning why transmission access would not be up under the economic cost. Because the further away the transmission, the more expensive it becomes. And so that would, want another pen?
I'm just gonna keep yours. How about that? Thank you all, sorry.
That's all right.
Why
We
is
need to ask for an increase in their budget.
There goes the expensive pen. Yeah, you notice he's never brought Elma.
No. Thank you, Ryan. That's a great question as well. Good answer. And this is part of what I'm also doing is I'm formulating this frequently asked questions. My guess is we're gonna have, a customer facing website. So these are good, great questions. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's the least I can do.
Other questions about these 5 factors before I?
Did I understand you correctly that those 5 bullets each kind of weigh the same within that 20?
Yeah, 5% each, correct.
Okay, we've got Senate Bill 21-272. That
Okay.
requires PUC consider an equity map
Yes.
for PUC consideration. Is that gonna interact with your matrix?
I'm going to say yes. I don't know how.
Well,
That's
I know.
related.
What was that Senate bill again?
Senate Bill 21-272.
They just had, or they're having a series of workshops right now on that issue. The PUC, as I saw part of one in last week.
And which one is that?
It's
Remind me.
about equity.
Yeah,
Well, it's really kind of as I understand it, redirecting the PUC to look at other things than they've historically done.
and part of what John's referring to, so they have created a map for the entire state that identifies disproportionately impacted communities. And that definition is not just economic, that definition, race is included, energy burden is part of that, environmental screens, there's a whole bunch of different things. And so, yes, John, to your point, yes, it's going to be considered.
Well,
It's not part of that official evaluation, which I think is an interesting point to bring up. So I'll find out how exactly that will be contemplated in this process.
Yeah. And if you discover an expert on Senate Bill 21-272, I'd like to know their name.
I bet a lot of people would like to know their name.
I can send out if folks would like the email from the PUC that lines out when these different workshops are.
There's one on 17.
Participated.
So soon.
Yeah, so, anyway, so this is why I'm kind of here to talk to you, and Jeff, you go ahead and go, because here's what we're committed to. As the utility, we have really 4 charges here. We need a competitive solicitation process, something that's going to be overseen and evaluated. We're going to receive help from a third party. We are committed to local economic development. Now, what that means is our system serves local customers. The interconnection is important as to where that's going to happen. So it's likely that these projects are going to be very close to the communities that we serve. Geographic diversity, I mentioned that. We do want different sizes of projects. I don't know that anybody has specified they have to be 100 megawatts each. They just want different sizes and different places for these projects to occur. And then I like to point out that there is, we are allowed to own 50% of the renewables that are being proposed through the legislative process that was in the legislation. So we are bidding into this process. Now there's a couple of different ways that we do that. One is, and I'm trying to remember the acronym, but it is essentially where developer builds it and then turns it over and purchase it from them. So we don't design it, we don't build it, we purchase it. Yeah, essentially. And I can't remember the acronym.
But you said you only own 50% of it?
We can own up to 50%.
Who owns the other 50?
It would be developers. And then we would contract and purchase the energy from them.
And actually, until a
Solar
few years
companies,
ago, the
things like that.
utility couldn't own any of the renewables. I can't remember how many years it's been in, but they just, maybe in the last 10 years have allowed utilities to own their own renewables.
And I assume Kathy or anyone that relates to what can get built into the rate base, that's a piece of all that.
Yeah, frankly, it helps the stockholders. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you have to understand that all of the energy cost is built in some way, shape, or form. It's part of the cost of service. And so I would just say that, from a utility ownership perspective, there are some benefits. And Kathy, probably this as well as anybody, right? When a utility operates its own system, you have some say, you have some control over that. I think about, not to pick on Excel, but I think about as Comanche has not functioned well in Pueblo, but you've seen the oversight that the PUC has on that process. If a developer owned it, they would not have that oversight. So protection for customers certainly exists when the utility owns the assets. And so that's one reason that I would suggest that, there is some value there. But we are looking into utility ownership. And those are the 4 things that we're doing as part of this process is we're going to bid in and we're trying to be successful. So the reason I keep this little word, I put this little word cloud in here is because really, that 5% about communities and what communities want, this is really the opportunity for the city to tell us what would help them support a bid. It would be most important for us to hear that from the city before we get these bids. So is it how important is it for it to be, I'm just going to use examples. If it's in Fremont County, you're getting what? You're getting probably just property tax, your small portion of property tax. Do you even get property tax?
We do. It's very small.
Very small. But wouldn't it be better if it was in the city boundaries? I mean, you get sales and use tax, right? So things like that, local job component, who knows what. I'm just going to suggest that this is the opportunity for Canyon City to kind of let their voice be heard, say this is what's important to us and this is what will help us support a bid. You are going to be one of many voices. You saw the number of interveners. I would just tell you, it's important for you to let your voice be heard. This is not a quasi-judicial process. And so, Ryan, you have every opportunity to sit down with our regulatory team and talk as freely as you want.
What, are we looking solely solar projects or are there other projects?
It could be solar, it could be wind. We're not designating. It's going to be about cost and affordability. So yeah, I guess part of what I'm saying to the committee is, I would definitely, I don't think it's appropriate for the committee to have this conversation, but I do think you could maybe share your priorities with the city and Ryan, I think there's an opportunity for you and, you and city staff to speak with our regulatory team.
Could the city even make a recommendation like, we don't want windmills? Environmentally, they're not what people say they are. They're overpriced. You'll never get your money back. Is that taken into consideration?
The city they can let whatever opinion they have be known. It is your opportunity to really weigh in. And I recommend before those bids come in, because it would be great to, not to be muddling the process of evaluation, be great to know it ahead of time. What you might be more willing, and nobody's like holding your feet to the fire. It's just like, hey, if we really want something in Fremont County, or if we think we've got a spot in the city, Yeah, and we're 100% on board with that.
I'm not sure if I understood your comment a minute ago about the committee wouldn't or shouldn't be involved in that.
I'm just suggesting that I don't think, honestly, I don't think that our regulatory team has that kind of capacity to have multiple open meetings about it. I'd like for this committee to maybe give staff direction
Gotcha.
and then
Okay.
let the staff work with our staff.
Yeah.
Got it.
But yes, absolutely, you guys, you all have strong opinions and you should let them be known.
I guess hydropower's out, right?
So hydropower is not considered renewable.
What? They still don't,
Yeah.
that just.
Why? It is renewable.
Don't get us started.
I wanna go, I want.
Back on your first slide,
Mm.
the, where we're talking, where, the balances, safety, reliability, affordability.
Yes,
The one ability that's missing from there, from my perspective, which is distressing to me, is availability.
can you expand on that?
Yeah.
In other words, it's more a comment on the reserves type thing. In other words, having lots of renewable energy is fine while the sun shines.
Sure. And John, I appreciate that point. I do want to point out, again, if you look in Colorado and you just look at what's happening, look outside of Black Hills Energy Service Territory, what's happening? They're not only building renewables, they're building gas. If you look at what happened in Colorado Springs, they've got 9 new generating stations that are sitting there that have just replaced coal. We already built PAGs. I know you all are very, very well educated about the value of PAGs. That is our base load. It serves 100% of the 99,000 customers in Colorado without any additional resource. So that's already in place. All these other renewables are just going to offset the amount of time that we use PAGs.
And
What's
it's
that,
the,
Max?
at least.
I'm sorry, for this gentleman's benefit, it's the Pueblo Airport Generating Station. So we have a 400 megawatt natural gas facility in Pueblo, and that's what provides the base load to all of our customers in Colorado.
Okay, thanks.
And I would just add that in regard to renewables, it's always worth keeping several things in mind, like the improvements being made over time with storage. The fact that the fuel is free and if natural gas, what do we call that? The commodity of natural gas where the price is not regulated. It can be all over the map. So in a sense, renewables give the company and the communities a nice buffer there in terms of what natural gas might do in the future. Well, I have no clue.
Right.
There's a lot of things that impact that.
The value of these renewables really are from a cost savings perspective. Again, as much as we can generate in renewables, we're offsetting the cost effect of the Pueblo Airport Generating Station and the fuel that we burn in order to make electricity there. And still having that reliability. And I go back to, it was just December of 2022, I believe, that we hit a new winter peak and we got almost zero from our wind and solar or from the wind on our system. And so it was all carried for PAGs.
Is Black Hills like XL to where you peak summer and winter?
Yeah, we did set a new winter peak in just this past year. Yeah.
I know you
200
just said that, but I was wondering if you peak also obviously in the summer.
Yeah, but summer is definitely, I mean, it's double our, almost double our peak in the winter.
Double the winter, is that what you're saying?
And it's almost double the winter peak, yep. Yeah.
For those of us who don't have air conditioning, it's just stunning.
Those of us who hang meat in our basement.
So anyway, that's really the gist of the presentation that I wanted to share with you. I'm certainly open for, as you know, I'm taking questions, and if I don't have answers, I'm getting them back to you. But I think it's a great opportunity for, this is what we've talked about when I've said an opportunity to partner. This is an opportunity for the city to say, gosh, it really does benefit us to have something in the city limits. And so, that would be a first priority, or whatever the case may be. I'm not going to suggest I know.
Where else will you be making this presentation, John?
So I shared this last Thursday with the Mayor's Energy Committee in Pueblo. I will likely, I also shared it Thursday, Wednesday, with the community advisory committee that we have set up through Black Hills Energy. I don't anticipate any other right now, but I'm happy to do them for anyone. So if you have an audience and think Bill would benefit, I'd be happy to do it.
And of course, we ask much better questions, correct?
No, you actually did. I gotta tell you, you can watch the Mayor's Energy Committee if you're really bored and see some of the questions that came out.
Is that the Pueblo group or something?
Yeah, it's the Mayor Gradisar's Energy
Right.
Committee.
How long have you been with Black Hills in your current capacity?
My 5-year anniversary will be in October.
All right. Did
They
you
give you a catalog to pick out? that you want?
the same position?
I'm sorry.
Same position?
Yes, correct,
And that was when you started with Black Hills?
correct.
Where'd you come from?
I was an assistant city manager for the city of Pueblo prior to that.
Okay.
Well, it's helpful to know the timeframe now. and have enough
right.
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
during that.
Yep. Yep. Sorry. All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Appreciate that. Okay, I think that's all the business we've got in front of us. So we'll be adjourned here shortly, but we will trigger the next meeting, and as soon as I hear the trigger, I'll let you all know.
That's good.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
But keep your Mondays clear.